Loving yourself isn't a luxury, it isn't an indulgence. It isn't an act of narcissism, arrogance, or selfishness. Loving yourself is the foundation on which everything else stands. Your relationships, your decisions, your values, your peace, your resilience, your future. And yet so many people feel guilty when they try to give themselves the very thing their heart has been starving for. They've been conditioned to believe that caring for themselves somehow takes something away from others, as if love were a limited resource that must be rationed out carefully, cautiously, even fearfully. But loving yourself without being selfish is one of the most powerful, generous, world-expanding acts a human being can commit to. It elevates you, and when you rise, everything in your life rises with you. Most people misunderstand the difference between self-love and selfishness. Selfishness is rooted in fear, scarcity, insecurity. It says, there isn't enough for everyone, so I'll take what I can. But self-love says, I will honor myself so I can show up fully for the world. When you love yourself properly, you don't take more from life. You bring more to it. You become more patient, more present, more confident, more compassionate. You stop searching for validation in every corner of the world because you finally understand that you are not empty. You are not lacking. You are not a mistake waiting to be fixed. You are a human being with needs, with worth, with irreplaceable value. And when you operate from that truth, everything about the way you move through life transforms. For most people, the struggle begins because they've spent years, sometimes decades, giving more than they have to others while giving almost nothing to themselves. They pour out energy, attention, support, love, reassurance, and presence to everyone around them, believing that this makes them good, worthy, or selfless. But they do it in a way that drains them instead of strengthening them. And when they finally try to take a breath for themselves, they feel guilty, as if they're betraying the world for simply trying to be whole. This guilt is not a sign that you're selfish. It's a sign that you've ignored yourself for too long. You can't serve the world by denying your own existence. You can't uplift others by shrinking yourself. You can't help anyone when you're running on fumes. Loving yourself means refueling the very engine that powers everything else you give. The truth is, you cannot give what you do not have. You cannot offer strength from a foundation that is crumbling. You cannot offer love if the place within you is filled with doubt, fear, shame, or self-rejection. When you treat yourself with compassion, patience, and respect, it doesn't just benefit you, it benefits every person who touches your life. Because when your heart is steady, your presence becomes an anchor for others. When your mind is clear, your decisions become wiser. When your spirit is full, your energy becomes a force that uplifts everyone around you. Loving yourself, then, is not a selfish act, but a responsibility. It is the first step toward creating a life that contributes rather than collapses. But loving yourself requires honesty, the kind of honesty most people avoid because it forces them to confront what they've been running from. To love yourself, you must be willing to acknowledge your wounds, your mistakes, your triggers, your patterns, your fears. You must be willing to see the parts of you that are difficult, not to judge them, but to understand them. Real self-love is not telling yourself you're perfect, it's accepting yourself as human. It's looking at your flaws with compassion instead of criticism. It's recognizing that every scar has a story behind it, and those stories shape the strength you now carry. Loving yourself means giving yourself the grace to grow, the permission to improve, and the patience to unfold at your own pace instead of comparing your timeline to someone else's. One of the greatest obstacles to loving yourself is the belief that love must be earned. Many people grow up with the idea that love comes only when they achieve something. Good grades, a certain appearance, a level of performance, the approval of others. They become adults who continue this exhausting pattern, always chasing love like a finish line that keeps moving. But love is not a prize. It is a birthright. You don't earn the right to love yourself by proving something, you earn it by existing. And once you understand that, the pressure to constantly be enough dissipates. You begin to realize you have always been enough. The only thing that needed to change was your belief. Another misunderstanding is the fear that if you love yourself, you will become self-absorbed or complacent. But this fear is rooted in a misconception. Loving yourself doesn't mean you stop striving for growth. It means you stop growing from a place of adequacy. You stop improving because you feel broken and start improving because you see your potential. That shift is everything. It replaces anxiety with intention, guilt with clarity, insecurity with confidence. When you love yourself, you don't become arrogant, you become grounded. You don't become selfish, you become centered. You don't become lazy, you become purposeful. True self-love is not loud, boastful, or dramatic. It is steady, quiet, and powerful. One of the most important parts of loving yourself without becoming selfish is setting boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They don't keep people out, they keep your energy safe. They don't punish others, they protect your peace. When you say yes to everything, you are not being loving. You are being afraid of disappointing others, afraid of conflict, afraid of being judged. But saying yes to everything is a form of self-abandonment. Loving yourself means recognizing that your time, your mental health, your emotional capacity, and your well-being are not negotiable. When you create boundaries, you teach others how to treat you, but more importantly, you teach yourself that you matter. And sometimes loving yourself means walking away from environments that shrink you, from relationships that drain you, from habits that sabotage you, from beliefs that cage you. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of self-love. People think walking away is selfish, but often it's the most loving thing you can do for yourself and even for the other person. Staying in situations where you are diminishing your spirit helps no one. It breeds resentment, frustration, and emotional exhaustion. When you walk away from what harms you, you walk toward what heals you. And healing is never selfish. Loving yourself also means speaking to yourself with kindness. So many people talk to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they care about. They criticize themselves, belittle themselves, judge themselves harshly, and replay every mistake they've ever made. They carry words that were never theirs to carry, often inherited from people who didn't know how to love properly either. Self-love requires relearning the language you use with yourself. It means recognizing when your inner voice is repeating lies and intentionally replacing them with truths. It means becoming your own encourager, your own supporter, your own source of compassion. When your inner dialogue becomes loving, your entire life feels different. Another essential part of loving yourself is honoring your needs. Your emotional needs, your physical needs, your mental needs, your spiritual needs. Too many people live in a state of chronic self-neglect. They ignore signs of burnout, suppress their feelings, abandon their desires, and call it strength. But strength is not suppressing your needs. Strength is acknowledging them and acting on them. When you rest, you're not being lazy. You're restoring. When you ask for help, you're not being weak. You're being wise. When you express your feelings, you're not being dramatic. You're being authentic. When you take time for yourself, you're not being selfish. You're being responsible. Self-love is the art of treating yourself as someone who deserves care, respect, and nourishment. Loving yourself also means forgiving yourself, not because you deserve forgiveness by some external standard, but because carrying self-blame, shame, and regret keeps you stuck. There is no version of you that becomes better by holding on to self-punishment. You grow by learning, not by lingering. You rise by understanding, not by condemning. You evolve by releasing, not by clutching the past. Forgiving yourself isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about recognizing that you are no longer the person who made that choice. You have learned. You have grown. You are moving forward. And moving forward is an act of love. Self-love becomes most powerful when it shifts from something internal to something you express through your actions. When you love yourself, you choose relationships that honor you instead of ones that diminish you. You pursue goals that align with your soul instead of ones that only satisfy external expectations. You stop settling for crumbs because you finally realize you deserve a full life. And this doesn't make you selfish, it makes you truthful. It makes you someone who respects themselves enough to demand a life that reflects their worth. And the beautiful thing about loving yourself is that it expands your capacity to love others. When you feel secure in who you are, you stop competing with people. You stop comparing yourself. You stop resenting them. You start celebrating them. You become someone who can give freely because you are not giving from emptiness. You are giving from overflow. Your love becomes cleaner, stronger, more generous because it isn't fueled by need, it's fueled by abundance. People feel safer around someone who feels safe within themselves. People feel loved by someone who loves themselves. People feel inspired by someone who honors their own life. The way you treat yourself sets the tone for every connection you have. What's remarkable is that once you truly commit to loving yourself, your entire world begins to shift. The opportunities you attract, the relationships you build, the choices you make, they all begin to align with this new understanding of who you are. You stop chasing people who don't appreciate you because you finally appreciate yourself. You stop tolerating disrespect because you respect yourself. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable because you're no longer willing to be small in your own story. Loving yourself becomes the compass that points you toward a life that reflects your truth rather than your fears. But loving yourself is not a one-time decision. It is a lifelong practice. There will be days when it's easy and days when it feels impossible. Days when your confidence is unshakable and days when every insecurity resurfaces. Days when you feel unstoppable and days when you feel lost. But loving yourself means showing up even on the difficult days. It means choosing yourself even when it's uncomfortable. It means remembering your worth even when life tests you. It means refusing to abandon yourself no matter what. To truly love yourself without becoming selfish, you must understand that love is not a limited resource. You do not lose anything by giving love to yourself. You only multiply what you have to give. Self-love is not about prioritizing yourself above others. It's about learning how to be a whole, grounded, compassionate human being so that you can offer the best of who you are to the people you care about. When you love yourself, you don't become selfish. You become someone who can love without fear, without emptiness, without resentment, without conditions. Love is not something you hoard. It's something you cultivate. And the place where it must begin is within you. Because when you finally choose to love yourself, to truly honor your worth, your needs, your boundaries, your dreams, your healing, you become someone the world is better because of. You become a force of strength, a source of peace, a presence of authenticity. You become someone who moves with intention, not desperation, with purpose, not fear, with clarity, not confusion. Loving yourself is not the opposite of loving others. It is the foundation of loving others. And when you understand that, you realize that the most unselfish thing you can ever do is to become someone who is full enough, healed enough, strong enough, and present enough to give the world a version of you that is whole. Loving yourself starts with honoring your needs without apologizing for them. And this is one of the most fundamental shifts a person can make in their life. Most people grow up believing their needs should come second, or third, or last, taught to prioritize the comfort, approval, and expectations of others before ever listening to the quiet voice inside themselves. That conditioning runs deep. It shows up when you say yes while your whole body is begging you to say no. It shows up when you ignore your exhaustion because you don't want someone to think you're weak. It shows up when you bite your tongue because you don't want to upset anyone, even though it hurts you to stay silent. Honoring your needs isn't selfish. It's the beginning of learning how to treat yourself with the same respect and care you try to give others. When you deny your needs, you deny your humanity. When you suppress what matters to you, you suppress your voice, your truth, your identity. Loving yourself requires you to admit that your needs are real, valid, and worthy of consideration. The challenge is that most people fear that honoring their needs will create conflict. They worry that others will be disappointed or judge them. They fear being labeled as difficult, ungrateful, or self-centered. The truth is, the people who genuinely care about you want you to honor your needs, because when you do, you show up in a healthier, clearer, more grounded way. The only people who get upset when you honor your needs are those who benefited from you ignoring them. The moment you decide to stop abandoning yourself, you begin rewriting the rules of your life. You choose authenticity over approval. You choose integrity over people pleasing. You choose alignment over guilt. And in doing so, you discover that honoring your needs not only protects your well-being, but actually strengthens your relationships. Because relationships built on self-abandonment are fragile, but relationships built on truth are unbreakable. Honoring your needs begins with awareness. You cannot honor what you refuse to acknowledge. Many people have spent so long running on autopilot that they don't even know what their needs are. They've disconnected from their emotions, numbed themselves to their own discomfort, and pushed through life believing that strength means silence. But true strength begins with paying attention. You start noticing the tension in your chest that shows up every time you say yes out of obligation. You start noticing the sinking feeling in your stomach that appears when you're in situations that drain you. You start noticing the heaviness in your mind when you ignore your rest. Needs don't disappear when they're neglected. They simply become louder in the form of stress, resentment, burnout, frustration, anxiety, or emptiness. When you start listening, you begin to recognize the difference between what nourishes you and what depletes you. That recognition becomes the foundation for change. Once you're aware of your needs, The next step is giving yourself permission to honor them. This is where many people struggle because they've been conditioned to believe that their value comes from how much they tolerate, sacrifice, or endure. They think that saying no is selfish, that resting is lazy, that asking for help is burdensome, that expressing their feelings is dramatic. But these beliefs were taught, not chosen. And what was learned can be unlearned. Giving yourself permission means reminding yourself that you have the right to feel, to rest, to prioritize, to change your mind, to take space, to protect your peace. It means you stop apologizing for being human. It means you recognize that your well-being is not optional. It means you accept that you are not here to constantly perform, accommodate, or please at the expense of your own mental and emotional health. Permission is the doorway through which true self-love walks. Honoring your needs also requires courage. There will be moments when choosing yourself feels uncomfortable, especially if you spent your whole life doing the opposite. Setting boundaries might shake you. Saying no might scare you. Taking time for yourself might feel foreign. But discomfort is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something new. Growth often feels like resistance because your old patterns want to pull you back into familiar territory, even when familiar territory hurt you. Courage doesn't mean you're never afraid. It means you move anyway because you've decided that your peace matters too. It means you choose long-term alignment over short-term comfort. It means you honor your needs even when your inner critic whispers that you shouldn't. Every time you choose yourself, you weaken the old pattern of self-neglect and strengthen the new pattern of self-respect. Honoring your needs also invites you to build healthier boundaries with others. A boundary is not a rejection, it's a declaration of your limits. It's the line that separates what is acceptable in your life from what is not. When you don't have boundaries, your needs are always at risk of being pushed aside. You end up exhausted, overwhelmed, and underappreciated. But when you have boundaries, you create a space where your needs can exist without guilt. Boundaries allow you to protect your energy, your time, your emotional bandwidth, and your mental clarity. The people who value you will respect your boundaries. The people who don't were never invested in your well-being. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're essential for maintaining balance and authenticity. Another part of honoring your needs is learning to say no without explaining yourself endlessly. Many people over-explain as a way of softening the impact of their no, hoping to avoid conflict or disappointment. But a no that is drenched in justification is not a confident no, it's a fearful one. Honoring your needs means recognizing that your reasons are valid even if they remain unspoken. A simple no can be a full sentence. You don't owe everyone an elaborate explanation for why you're choosing yourself. When you stop over-explaining, you begin to trust your own judgment. You begin to see that your needs don't require permission from others to be legitimate. Honoring your needs also means nurturing yourself consistently. Many people treat self-care as a reward or an escape, a response to burnout instead of a prevention of it. True self-love requires consistency. It requires checking in with yourself regularly. It requires giving yourself what you need not only when you're falling apart, but also when you're functioning well. It means building habits that nourish you daily, whether it's rest, movement, silence, reflection, creativity, mindfulness, connection, or solitude. When you nourish yourself consistently, you no longer wait until you're drained to take action. You begin to live from a place of steadiness instead of survival. There's also a deeper level to honoring your needs, and it involves emotional honesty. Many people pretend they're fine because they don't want to confront what they truly feel. They avoid acknowledging their needs because acknowledging them means they may have to make changes, sometimes big ones. Emotional honesty requires courage because it forces you to admit what hurts, what's missing, what you long for, what you fear, what you desire. But emotional honesty is also liberating. When you are honest with yourself, you stop pretending, you stop settling, you stop accepting less than what aligns with your inner truth. Emotional honesty is the gateway to emotional freedom, and emotional freedom is the foundation of self-love. Honoring your needs also means understanding that you cannot live your life solely for the comfort of others. You are not born to adapt yourself into a version that pleases everyone at the cost of your own well-being. When you dim your light to avoid outshining others, you betray your potential. When you silence your voice to avoid conflict, you betray your authenticity. When you stay in environments that suffocate your spirit, you betray your purpose. Loving yourself means learning to hold your worth firmly even when others don't understand. It means accepting that not everyone will agree with your choices. Not everyone will applaud your boundaries. Not everyone will support your healing, and that's okay. You are not here to be universally approved. You are here to be aligned with your truth. Another part of honoring your needs involves embracing the idea that your needs will evolve as you grow. What you needed 5 years ago may not match what you need now. What you tolerated in the past may feel unacceptable today. Loving yourself means allowing your needs to change without feeling guilty. It means evolving without apologizing. It means allowing yourself to shift, expand, and redefine what matters to you. You are allowed to outgrow habits, people, dreams, environments, and versions of yourself that no longer support your growth. Honoring your needs means honoring your evolution. Finally, honoring your needs without apologizing helps you create a life that feels true to who you are. It becomes easier to make decisions because you're no longer trying to please everyone. You're choosing what aligns with your well-being. It becomes easier to navigate relationships because you're no longer abandoning yourself to maintain them. You're building connections that are mutual, respectful, and real. It becomes easier to pursue your goals because you're no longer weighed down by guilt or self-neglect. You're operating from clarity and conviction. And as you continue honoring your needs, you begin to realize that the love you give yourself becomes the love that elevates your entire life.